Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today along with my colleague from Missouri, Senator Blunt, to offer a couple of amendments that have been filed and that I hope we get an opportunity to vote on before this process concludes. But if you look at the base Democrat budget that's been put before us, it's got large tax increases in it. In fact, up to $1.5 trillion in new taxes. What we would attempt to do is to ensure that those taxes, higher taxes, not come by limiting, capping, or eliminating, I should say, the federal tax deduction for charitable giving. We've got tens of millions of Americans who remain mired in poverty. Government budgets are more constrained than ever before. And what fills that gap, Madam President, is the charitable giving. It's the generosity of people around this country who keep organizations going that are providing these essential and basic functions for many Americans. In fact, in 2011, Americans gave nearly $300 billion to support charitable causes. This generosity not only helps to feed the hungry and clothe the needy, it has a real budgetary impact because this is an instance where the private sector is fulfilling the need, a need that otherwise would have to be met by government spending. Unfortunately, as we know, the White House has proposed limiting the value of itemized deductions for those earning above $200,000 for singles and $250,000 for married couples to 28%. Now, previous estimates were that this proposal would reduce charitable donations by up to $5.6 billion per year. As the Charitable Giving Coalition has recently stated, that amounts to more than the annual budgets of the Red Cross, Goodwill, the YMCA, Habitat for Humanity, the Boys and Girls Clubs, Catholic Charities, and the American Cancer Society combined. But even this impact understates the degree to which charitable giving could be harmed under the White House proposal, because we now have a new baseline with a higher top income tax rate. A new study by the American Enterprise Institute estimates that the President's itemized limitation under the new tax rates will lower total giving by individuals by more than $9.4 billion per year. Madam President, we ought to be exploring new options to expand charitable giving rather than limiting the charitable deduction in order to fund higher levels of government spending. If we're going to explore any changes to the charitable deduction or any other tax provisions that we have in the tax code today, it ought to be in the context of pro-growth, revenue-neutral tax reform, not as a way to pay for higher spending, which is what these proposals would do. I hope the vote on this amendment this time around will be just as broad and bipartisan as the one that I offered back in 2009, where we got 94 votes in support. The second amendment, Madam President, will put the Senate on record in support of eliminating the destructive federal estate tax, better known as the death tax. And that's an amendment, again, I offer with the senator from Missouri and several others of my colleagues. I've long believed that the federal estate tax is an unnecessary, counterproductive, and inefficient tax. But more importantly, the death tax strikes many of us as not simply being bad tax policy, but a policy that runs counter to the very essence of the American free market system. This isn't a tax on rich fat cats, as some will claim. We already have an income tax, and it's one of the most progressive income taxes in the developed world. The death tax is different because it's a tax on success. It's a tax on assets that have been accumulated through a lifetime of hard work and generated from income that was already taxed when it was earned. Many of these businesses are land rich and cash poor, meaning that the value of the business in the land is in the land and in the business assets. These businesses do not have substantial liquid assets just sitting around to pay a second layer of tax that is imposed when a loved one passes away. As a result, the death tax often requires that business assets are sold simply to pay the tax. Now consider South Dakota, Madam President, where we've seen farmland prices increased by over 50% in just the past 5 years. States such as Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, North Dakota, Minnesota have seen similar increases. My amendment would finally give farmers, ranchers, and family business owners peace of mind, and will do so in a deficit-neutral way. When we voted on a sense of the Senate to eliminate the death tax back in 2002, 11 Senate Democrats supported that, including a number of senators that are still in the Senate today. Much has changed since 2002, but I believe the death tax was bad tax law then. It remains so today, and I hope we will get a strong bipartisan vote on this amendment this year as well during the budget process, Madam President. Let me, before I shift to my colleague from Missouri, just simply say that As I've said before, when we look at this budget process and we look at the budget proposal that's been put before us by the Senate Democrats, the question we ought to be asking is, what does this do to promote economic growth? What does this do to create jobs? Because more than anything else, what we need in this country today is increased economic growth. That will get those people who are unemployed back to work. That will increase the take-home pay of middle-class Americans. We've seen a sluggish economy, chronic high unemployment, massive amounts of debt over the past 4 years. It's time to chart a different course, and the way that you do that is to put policies in place that will encourage economic growth. A $1.5 trillion tax increase is not the way to do that, and it certainly isn't the way to do that, to take away the incentive that people in this country have to continue to give out of the generosity of their hearts, the charitable organizations all across this country. And it's also important, Madam President, that we do once and for all get rid of the death tax, which is so punitive to people who've worked so hard and want to pass that on to the next generation of Americans. Madam President, I'm happy to yield to my colleague from Missouri who, like me, represents a lot of farmers and ranchers and hardworking small business people for whom these tax issues are really important, and let him offer some comments about the impact of these tax policies and some of the proposed budget proposals coming out of the Senate Democrats and the impact they would have on the state of Missouri.